What if every picture you took revealed something you weren't supposed to see? Something strange, something crawling just outside the frame, something that doesn't belong to this world at all. For most of us, a camera is just for fun, capturing memories, smiles, and silly faces. But for Courage the Cowardly Dog, the camera is no harmless toy. In the middle of nowhere, even a simple snapshot can uncover horrors that no one else dares to look at. In the quiet emptiness of nowhere, where the wind howls louder than the crickets and the skies always seem a little too dark, lives a pink dog named Courage. He doesn't live in a busy city, and he doesn't have neighbors just across the street. No, Courage lives with Muriel, the kind old woman who loves him, and Eustace, the grumpy farmer who never shows kindness. Their house sits in the middle of an endless field, and while it may look lonely, it's far from peaceful. Strange things always happen here. Monsters, spirits, aliens. Courage has faced them all. But nothing could have prepared him for the day he discovered the old camera. The story begins on a stormy evening. Lightning flashed across the plains, and thunder shook the windows of the farmhouse. Inside, Courage rummaged through the attic, searching for a blanket to keep Muriel warm. That's when he saw it, a dusty, old camera tucked away inside a wooden trunk. Its leather strap was cracked, and its lens had a faint glow, like it had been waiting for someone to find it. Courage picked it up carefully, unsure if it still worked. But curiosity is a powerful thing, even for a scared little dog. He raised the camera, pressed the button, and with a sharp click, the flash filled the attic dock. At first, it seemed harmless. Just a picture. Just light. But when Courage looked at the photograph, his stomach sank. In the photo, the attic looked the same, except for one detail. A tall, shadowy figure stood behind him, even though he knew he was alone. Courage's ears drooped, his eyes bulged wide, and his jaw trembled. He barked, then whimpered, then clutched the photo like it might disappear. He knew better than anyone. In nowhere, things that seem ordinary can turn out to be something else entirely. The strange discovery didn't stop there. Later that night, while Muriel was knitting in her chair, Courage decided to test the camera again. Maybe it was just his imagination, maybe he was too tired. He snapped a picture of Muriel, expecting to see her sweet face smiling back. But in the photo, her rocking chair wasn't empty. Behind Muriel's gentle figure stood something terrifying, a ghostly outline with hollow eyes reaching for her shoulder. Courage yelped, dropped the photo, and jumped into Muriel's arms. Of course, Muriel just laughed, patting his head. "Oh, Courage, you silly dog," she said, completely unaware of the horror her picture revealed. From that moment on, Courage realized the camera wasn't normal. Every time he used it, the world it showed was different from what anyone else could see. The camera revealed secrets, the kind of secrets that lived in the dark corners of their home, the kind that whispered through the floorboards and crept across the walls. And while Muriel stayed calm and Eustace stayed grumpy, Courage was the only one who truly understood. He wasn't just taking pictures. He was looking through a window into something terrifying. The house in the middle of nowhere was already haunted by mystery, but with the camera in his paws, Courage felt like the line between what was real and what was hidden was breaking apart. Every click of the shutter meant another glimpse into the unknown. Some photos showed faces that weren't supposed to be there. Others showed creatures lurking outside, staring in through the windows. Sometimes the photos even revealed things before they happened, as if the camera was trying to warn him, but with every discovery came fear. Courage didn't know if the camera was cursed, if it was a trap, or if it was simply showing him the truth of nowhere, the truth no one else wanted to see. And so, shaking, panting, and stumbling over his own paws, he carried the camera back to his room, clutching it tightly. He knew this was only the beginning. The Creepy Camera Chronicles had started, and Courage was right in the middle of it. The attic discovery was only the beginning. Courage couldn't shake the thought that the camera was more than just a tool. It was a trap, a trick, maybe even a curse. But like a moth drawn to a flame, Courage couldn't resist testing it again. And so, the Creepy Camera Chronicles began. It started innocently enough. The next morning, Muriel stood in the kitchen, humming softly as she baked her famous eggplant pie. Sunlight spilled through the window, filling the room with warmth. Courage thought, maybe this time it'll be normal. Maybe it was just my imagination. He carefully lifted the camera, framed Muriel in the kitchen light, and pressed the button. The flash went off, blinding him for a second. He blinked, wagging his tail nervously. But when the picture developed, Courage froze. Muriel looked the same, her gentle face, her soft eyes. But the pie on the counter was different. Instead of golden crust, the photo showed a bubbling, writhing mess of slimy creatures crawling out of the dish. Their tiny claws scratched at the edges of the plate, their eyes glowing like embers. Courage's fur stood on end, and he nearly swallowed his tongue in fright. He barked, howled, and spun in circles, desperately trying to warn Muriel. But she only chuckled. "Oh, Courage, you do make a fuss over nothing," she cut into the pie, completely unaware that the picture revealed something far more sinister. Later that day, Courage decided to test the camera again, this time on Eustace. The old farmer sat in his armchair, polishing his glasses and muttering about bills. Courage crept closer, raised the camera, and snapped a photo. The flash startled Eustace, who shouted, "Stupid dog! What's the matter with you?" But Courage wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the photo. In the picture, Eustace wasn't just sitting. Behind him loomed a dark shadow, shaped like a monstrous version of himself. Its grin stretched far too wide, and its bony fingers wrapped around the chair like claws. The shadow seemed to mock him, as if it had been hiding there all along, feeding off his anger. Courage let out a panicked squeal and bolted across the room, but Eustace just waved his slipper. "Bah, useless mutt!" He couldn't see what Courage could see. He never could. But the most terrifying encounter came when Courage accidentally turned the camera on himself. It happened late at night, when the house was quiet and the moon cast long silver beams across the floor. Courage, trembling as always, looked into the mirror. His reflection seemed ordinary, but curiosity pushed him. What if he took a picture of himself? What would the camera reveal? He gulped, held the camera with shaky paws, and clicked. The flash burned his eyes, and he waited for the photo to appear. When it did, Courage nearly fainted. His reflection wasn't alone. Dozens of glowing eyes stared back at him from the darkness behind his figure. Strange, twisted hands reached for his shoulders, but none of it was there in the real room, only in the photo. Courage's scream echoed through the farmhouse, bouncing off the walls like a siren. He tore the picture into pieces, but it didn't matter. The image had already burned itself into his memory. From then on, the camera became both a weapon and a curse. Every time Courage snapped a photo, the world around him twisted into something terrifying. The barnyard revealed strange footprints in the dirt, leading to nowhere. The windmill appeared broken and abandoned in pictures, even though it still turned slowly in the breeze. Sometimes, Courage swore the camera captured moments that hadn't happened yet, as though it wasn't just showing hidden things, but predicting horrors still to come. And yet, as frightened as he was, Courage couldn't let go of the camera. He knew it was dangerous, but he also knew it showed him the truth that Muriel and Eustace could never see. Maybe, just maybe, the camera could help him protect them. Even if it meant facing things no one else believed in, still, every picture came with a price. Courage's paws trembled whenever he pressed the button. His heart raced like a drum, and his ears twitched at every creak of the house. Each photo was a gamble. Would it show a harmless smile or something that could haunt him forever? In nowhere, nothing was ever safe. But with the camera in his paws, Courage realized one thing. Sometimes, seeing too much can be even scarier than seeing nothing at all. The more Courage used the camera, the less it felt like a tool and the more it felt like a trap. What had begun as curious little snapshots now twisted into something much worse. The camera no longer waited for him to click. It felt alive, as though it wanted to reveal horrors on its own. Each time Courage picked it up, his paws trembled, but his duty to protect Muriel kept him from throwing it away. He knew this cursed lens was showing him things for a reason. It began with whispers. Late at night, when the house groaned under the weight of the wind, Courage heard faint voices. Not from Muriel, not from Eustace, but from the camera itself. Sometimes it was a low growl, sometimes a distorted laugh, and sometimes his own voice echoing back at him, begging, "Don't look. Don't click. Of course, Courage didn't listen. Curiosity clawed at him. One stormy night, Courage dared to take another picture of the living room. The flash filled the space, and when the photo appeared, his heart nearly stopped. The image didn't show the present, it showed the future. In the picture, Muriel's knitting chair was empty, her yarn scattered on the floor as if she had been snatched away. Eustace's chair was overturned, and Courage himself was alone in the center of the room, clutching the cursed camera. He gasped, screamed, and frantically tried to warn Muriel, but she only smiled at him, calm as ever. To her, nothing was wrong. To Courage, everything was about to collapse. As the days passed, the visions became wilder, more surreal. The barn, when photographed, no longer looked like a barn. Instead, it stretched into an endless hallway, its doors swinging open to reveal strange, shifting shapes. The windmill turned into a tower of broken gears grinding against each other, dripping oil like black blood. Even the farmhouse itself looked different, its windows glowing like eyes, its walls breathing in and out as though the house were alive. Courage shook so violently that his teeth rattled, but he couldn't put the camera down. Then came the worst photo of all. One evening, Eustace dozed in his armchair, snoring loudly with his hat pulled over his face. Courage aimed the camera, hoping to catch something simple, something harmless. But when the photo developed, Courage nearly dropped it in horror. In the picture, Eustace wasn't human anymore. His face was stretched into a mask, his eyes hollow sockets, his body bent backward like a puppet on strings. And towering above him was a monstrous figure that looked disturbingly familiar. Courage squinted, then his jaw fell open. The monster was him. A twisted, monstrous version of Courage, with sharp teeth and glowing eyes, pulling Eustace's strings like a marionette. The little dog screamed so loudly that Muriel dropped her teacup. He tore the photo to shreds, his paws shaking, his heart hammering in his chest. But no matter how many pieces he ripped apart, the image stayed in his mind. He couldn't escape it. The camera wasn't just showing the truth anymore, it was showing possibilities. Nightmares, maybe even warnings. That night, Courage hid the camera under his bed, hoping to forget it. But when he woke the next morning, it was sitting on his nightstand, pointed directly at him. His eyes bulged, his ears shot straight up, and he leapt from the bed with a shriek. He hadn't touched it, yet it was there, waiting, almost demanding. From then on, every click of the shutter felt heavier, like Courage was feeding the camera with his fear. The photos grew darker, stranger, bending reality itself. Sometimes the images moved, the figures inside them twitching as though they wanted to escape the frame. Sometimes the photos changed when he looked away, smiles turning to screams, shadows creeping closer each time he blinked. Courage realized he wasn't just taking pictures anymore. He was peeling back layers of nowhere that weren't meant to be seen. The camera was pulling him into a world that existed just behind the curtain of his own. A world filled with shadows, monsters, and versions of himself he couldn't understand. The line between real life and the world inside the camera was beginning to blur. And as Courage clutched the strange device, trembling and whimpering, he wondered if he was still the one in control, or if the camera was controlling him. The cursed camera had grown restless. By now, Courage no longer felt like its owner, he felt like its prisoner. He had tried hiding it in the attic, burying it in the barn, even tossing it down the old well behind the farmhouse. But every time, the camera found its way back to him, sitting in the shadows, waiting. Its cracked leather strap swayed like a pendulum, and its lens glimmered as if it were a hungry eye. Courage shivered. He knew it wanted one last picture. The night of the climax began with silence, too much silence. The usual creaks of the windmill stopped, the distant cries of coyotes faded, even the buzzing of insects outside vanished. The farmhouse felt frozen in time. Muriel had gone to bed early, her gentle snores muffled by her blankets. Eustace grumbled in his chair, drifting into sleep. Courage sat alone in the living room, the camera heavy in his paws. His heart pounded, ears twitching at every small sound. Something inside him whispered, "Take the final picture." He didn't want to, but the pull was stronger than his fear. With shaky paws, Courage raised the camera and aimed it at the room. The flash burst, filling the farmhouse with blinding light. When the photograph slid out, Courage's eyes grew wider than ever before. This was no ordinary image. The photo showed the farmhouse, but not the one he knew. Its windows glowed with a sickly red light. The ground around it was cracked and scorched, stretching into a wasteland. Muriel's chair was empty. Eustace's chair was empty. And in the center of the picture stood Courage himself, but not the Courage he knew. This version of him was taller, darker, with razor teeth and eyes that burned like fire. He wasn't cowering. He wasn't trembling. He was grinning. Courage gasped, his fur bristling. He turned the photo over, tried to tear it, but the paper refused to rip. He dropped it, and it slid across the floor on its own, stopping at his paws. When he dared to look again, the photo had changed. Now the monstrous Courage was closer, staring directly at him, its grin wider. Panicked, Courage barked, whimpered, and ran in circles, trying to wake Muriel. But when he rushed into her room, she was gone. The bed was neatly made, as if she had never been there at all. He darted to the living room. Eustace's chair was empty too, his hat resting on the cushion. The farmhouse was silent, too silent, as if he were the only one left. Trembling, Courage picked up the camera once more. If the first photo had shown what might happen, maybe another could undo it. Maybe he could bring Muriel and Eustace back. His paws shook violently, but he lifted the camera and pressed the button. Flash, white light. Another photo slid out. This one was worse. In the picture, Courage was standing exactly where he was now, holding the camera. But behind him, the monstrous version was no longer in the photo. It was gone. Courage's ears shot up. His jaw dropped. He realized what that meant. The creature wasn't trapped in the picture anymore. Slowly, Courage turned his head. Behind him, the floor creaked. A shadow stretched across the wall, shaped like his own, but taller, sharper, wrong. His scream ripped through the farmhouse, echoing into the empty night. And then silence. The photo in his paws burned away into ash, scattering across the floor. The camera clattered from his grip and went dark, its lens closing like an eyelid. For a moment, the farmhouse was still. Then, faintly, Muriel's voice echoed through the air, calm and warm. "Oh, Courage. You silly dog." But she was nowhere to be seen. Courage sat trembling in the middle of the room. The camera gone, the photos gone, and the memory of that monstrous version of himself burned into his mind. He didn't know if Muriel and Eustace were safe, if they had ever been there at all, or if he was now living in the shadow world the camera had revealed. One thing was certain. In nowhere, nothing is ever truly gone. Sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't the ones hiding under the bed or lurking in the barn. Sometimes the scariest monster is the one staring back at you. And so ends this chapter of Courage's Creepy Camera Chronicles. But who knows? Maybe the camera isn't gone? Maybe it's out there, waiting to be found again? Waiting for another click, another flash, another unlucky soul to uncover its secrets, because in nowhere, every snapshot is more than just a picture. It's a glimpse into the nightmares that never sleep.